he will find a solution ASAP and get that sent out to everyone. So don't worry about voting for now. I suppose that means we can just focus on hearing people's speeches. So first up is the co-chair section. We have two candidates, Tom Hazel and Rosie Rule. By the way, I'm going to be doing everything in alphabetical order just to avoid any controversy. So first
three candidates, sorry, Raj.
Who's the third?
I think that's what I submitted my nomination for.
Oh, what do I have you down for? Oh, I'm so sorry, Liam. There we go. Okay, fine. So you'll be after Tom. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So yeah, everyone is invited to give a introduction / statement, and I will time those to be to stop at 45 seconds. So Tom, if you want to give your statement.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. My name's Tom Hazel, and I'm standing for Young Greens co-chair. Currently, I'm on the South East Young Greens committee. Our people, our planet, young people, and our party are facing unprecedented challenges. Now is the time for the Young Greens to offer young people hope with radical and fair solutions. We have to be leaders in the struggle for a greener and fairer future. So, if elected, my top 3 priorities to make sure we do this would be redoubling our electoral support efforts, following on from 2019's hugely successful local and European elections, running bold campaigns on a range of issues, from the Green New Deal to Fair Pay Campus, and offering practical solidarity to external youth-led campaigns like Youth Strike for Climate. And then finally, continuing to rebuild our regional groups so they can mobilise Young Greens and give us the capacity we need.
Cool, thank you, Tom. Then Liam.
Hello, so I'm standing to be re-elected for Young Greens co-chair. I want to continue to represent the Young Greens on the Holistic Review transition team. It's going to massively impact how our mother party operates, and it could massively impact the marginalised communities that operate within the Green Party, communities that are being sidelined externally. I'm incredibly concerned that our party is lurching towards focusing solely on environmental issues, which are hugely important, and we've seen the youth strike lead with that. So I feel it's really important that we also remember that people from a working poor background like myself who rely on benefits struggle to campaign or access some of these environmental issues because we're limited to where we can spend our money and how we can spend our money. I'd like to continue, I'd like to really lead with the 30 under 30. This year we've struggled to run that campaign and that training and development program.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, and finally, Rosie.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Rosie, and I'm also re-standing to be Young Greens co-chair, and I'm standing because front, right and centre, our political leaders seem to be intent on stamping down on our generation, whether this is Brexit or climate change or privatisation. The list goes on, but I believe that right now is the most exciting time to be involved in the Young Greens, and that the Young Greens in particular has a massive opportunity to put an end to this. So in the last year, I've been playing a particularly strong role in building our elections machine, our Young Greens elections machine and strategy. And so I'd like to continue building on this, especially in the face of a possible upcoming general election. But also this year, I really think that we need to be expanding our infrastructure. So that means building organised and active regions and local groups. And it will require some really new, awesome training programmes, including a speaker network.
Okay, that is time.
That's it. Cheers.
Sorry. Wow, I feel so mean doing that to everyone. All right. So questions for co-chair. The first one, I think we'll do them one at a time. So I'll ask the question and we can have the answers, and then next question. This year was the most successful electoral year in the Young Greens history. And as a political party, our main focus should be on electing brilliant people to all levels of government. If elected, what focus will you place on building on the successes from May and supporting more candidates from the youth wing to stand and win? So Tom, please.
Yep, so I completely think that elections need to be a key focus from us. So I think if I was elected co-chair, I'd make sure that the committee, one of our key focuses would be on the election work, and more specifically, increasing our training programs. So making sure that if we have young Green candidates, we're training them up to give them the best chance of being elected. Specifically, I'd also like to get involved with training kind of younger and potential candidates to navigate the local party selection process, because often I think young people are probably put off from standing just because their local party selection process is a bit hard to unpick.
Thank you. By the way, anyone just let me know if they need the question to be repeated. Liam.
Yes, I think Blake and Rosie did absolutely fantastic work this year on the elections, both the local elections and then the last minute European elections. I'd like to build on what they have been doing. I think it's important perhaps to increase subcommittee involvement to help carry the burden of that work. So I believe we sort of, perhaps a couple of members reached capacity in doing that, and we should share that. I'd really like to encourage our Senate members to get more involved, and that would mean voting down the proposal to scrap Senate, because that way those groups are able to best support people in their regions. They know the local parties better than people outside of that. So, you know, for example, within the East Midlands and the Midlands, Wes would be able to support local Young Greens in, you know, accessing that, rather than doing it as a remote thing. We should be empowering our members on the ground to do that.
Thank you. And Rosie.
Cheers. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing the elections work last year, and that was my key focus and ambition, that we would really develop what it means to get Young Greens involved in elections. And for me, that mostly involves that kind of regional organising, in particular just building a culture of getting people to action days and out during election time, and feeling like that's a really necessary and part of being involved in the Green Party, to show solidarity, to get out on the weekend and get campaigning. And I think we've done massively well. We had over 60 people get out. We had 11 action days in nearly every region, and I say nearly because I think that the next stage is developing those regions that we've struggled to in the past, particularly in the northeast and particularly in the northeast mostly, if I'm honest. The second thing is, as has been mentioned, developing our support to candidates who are standing, as that was something that we were lighter on this year, and could involve a lot of training and connecting more so as well.
Thank you very much. We have one more question for the co-chair candidates. Can you tell us why no reports or Q&As have happened this year as per the Constitution, and what methods you would put in place next year to improve accountability and democratic processes? Oh, two more questions actually, that's the first. Tom, please.
So I haven't been on the Young Greens committee specifically this year, so obviously I can't tell you why those reports haven't been coming out, but I have heard they haven't been coming out, and that does concern me. Obviously it's really important that the executive committee is accountable to the Young Green members. So if I was elected, I'd have to make sure there was a stringent process in place to make sure those reports came out regularly and on time every month.
Thank you. Liam?
I think we need a stronger working relationship with SPC, Structures and Procedures Committee, and that's something that we lacked this term, and is definitely something that we should be looking forward to. I apologise myself as co-chair. It should be something that I should also have been encouraging our other EC members to do. Capacity on having an EC which had such a high turnover and 2 election campaigns meant it went down our list of priorities, and that's wrong. And it's something we will work at with SPC next term to ensure that they are all posted on time, that the minutes from our meetings are also posted online, and that we work with SPC to support them in helping us put the Q&A on.
Cool. And Rosie?
Yeah, I equally think that it is extremely important, and it hasn't been good enough that those haven't gone up this year. In the end, I myself was drafting up an awful lot, redacting these so they're ready to go up online, and have been doing a lot of the chasing behind the scenes, I would say, and supporting SPC when they've not had capacity. So moving forwards, I'd like to ensure that we work harder just to get more capacity on SPC, rather than not there be too much work for one person, and therefore it have to fall to the co-chairs to like try and help with that. But yeah, there needs to be, I think, expectations set in our induction period so that everyone knows their roles and exactly what their expectations are. And it also involves some regular dates, I think, set up in advance rather than constant chasing each month as well. And we'll have a staff member, hopefully, as well, who usually used to do a lot of that minute work. So that would be, that's crucially been the minutes problem, basically. And it's been Liam and myself and possibly a couple of other people on the committee, Matthew included, who have been writing a lot of those minutes during the meetings, which is never ideal when you're also trying to chair one.
Cool. Next question. Being Young Greens co-chair is not just about raising your own profile. Can you tell us what are your plans for reaching a wider and more diverse group of people this year? So starting with Tom again, please.
Do you want to mix up the order?
So,
okay.
I mean, no, okay. So I mentioned earlier that I want the Young Greens to have a really broad vision. Oh, have I lost Wi-Fi again? No, I'm back. That I want the Young Greens to have a really broad vision for the future with a green and justice-focused view. And I think that we need to make sure that we're campaigning, not in terms of election campaigns, but in terms of campaigns on specific issues to make sure we reach the people that those issues affect the most. So, for example, that could be supporting external issues like Youth Fight for Strike, or it might be like the campaigns that the Young Greens have run before, for example, Fair Pay Campus. So, yeah, for me, it's supporting external campaigns and initiating our own campaigns to make sure we reach the people that the issues affect the most.
Thanks, Tom. And then Liam.
I think representation is actually a huge thing. And the more representation we see on our EC from people of colour, people living with disabilities, people overcoming adversity, the more that reaches out to our membership, and our membership looks at EC and says, actually, that's a role and that's a position that I can go for because I know X is doing this and they live with Y. I also think some of the work that myself and Rosie have had in discussions, which Rosie has submitted some fantastic motions for, around setting portfolio roles and including liberation groups at the table, is going to raise those profiles and also raise that engagement. We've struggled by not having an equality and diversity officer role this year filled, and it's meant that we've not had the engagement with our liberation groups as much as we should have. Separate to being Young Greens co-chair, I have been on the LGBTIQA+ Greens committee. So I've been working with them to raise profiles as well. And also, like, just when we have someone like Majid getting elected as a Green MEP, that speaks out so much to people that it's going to raise engagement from audiences that we don't normally see from.
Thank you. And Rosie.
Cheers. Yeah, it's a really great question. I think that we've particularly failed this year to support and engage liberation groups. They've been mostly inactive, and that is definitely the responsibility of our executive. So I'd be really keen to ensure that's our priority next year, basically. And as Liam mentioned, I'm actually quite keen to see liberation officers join the executive committee in the future. Though we'll have to see how that would work out, but that's something that I'd like to see in the future. Right now, I think some of the really easy things we can do is to develop our network and how we're seen, and the voices that we have in the Young Greens. The great talent that we have in the Young Greens and expertise is developing a speaker network. So currently we have very ad hoc calls, and often it will fall to by default to who's closest or who's free, or perhaps the co-chairs. But we need more voices to be representing the Young Greens. We've got so many talented people who can speak on so many issues and also represent completely different sections of our membership. So I think it would be really important to have that as a formalised thing, a well-supported and a trained network as well, who can feature in media but also in offline events. And as like building on what Thomas was saying about developing connections with like-minded organisations, this is another way to reach into worlds and memberships and other sections of young people, I suppose, and other audiences, and work collaboratively to bring new people in and also learn from other groups as well.
Thank you all very much. That's the co-chair section finished then. Now, treasurer. Unless I've made another mistake, I think we have just one candidate being a job share between Matthew Hull and Rowan Van Tromp. Do we have Rowan?
Just to jump in, Raj, there's been going on in the chat that James, who is also standing for co-chair, should have their candidate statement read out, which I think is on the email chain as well.
Let's find that. Wait, are you talking about James Platt? James Platt is no longer running. He pulled out yesterday. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning.
Thank you.
Yes, so on to treasurer. So do we have Rowan? I feel like we don't.
I haven't heard from him today, so I've assumed not.
Okay, cool. Do you have an introduction / statement that you would like to give, Matthew?
Yeah, I think it's only right that I do. After all, there is always the option of reopening nominations. So I'm going to focus rather on what I would do in the role, since everybody else has explained quite neatly why the Young Greens exists and what we exist to do. As treasurer, I want to make increased use of our increased financial capacity and staffing. Firstly, to re-emphasise our national campaigns, which have gone rather quiet, working with the committee to establish campaign leads, and most importantly, give them serious funding. I want to build on the Green Wave and the onboarding work that has already been done by the last EC and largely by Rosie to upskill and empower new local and regional officers. And for me, this really means expanding the training programs that we have, so that we not only focus on 30 under 30, which trains a smaller number of people to a higher level, but also equip a larger number of officers to do the important organisational building work that we need them to do. I think it's really important that as part of this support to the localities and regions, we ramp up the Active Greens Fund, which is a grant funding scheme from which local and regional groups can seek funding for their campaigns and actions. As part of that, I would want to conduct a sort of thorough advertising campaign and really produce some great resources to support groups. So
sorry, Matthew, I'll have to stop you there. So we have two questions for treasurer. The first one is the following. What will be your spending priorities?
So I sort of already touched on this a bit in what I was saying. I think it's important to note that we'll certainly have an increased sort of time and staffing capacity, thanks to a staff member which should be recruited in due course. In terms of financial capacity, I want to make sure that we can match the sort of organisational building work that we've already been doing with the resources that it needs. So we've already been starting to reach out to lots of new joiners, people who are interested in starting new groups, and also sort of beefing up the ones that we already have. And I think an important part of that is making money available to them, but also making sure that we support them in using that money. So I want to see every region in the country, and preferably I want to see several applications from each region. I want to see each region applying for the Active Greens Fund, and I want to see the Young Greens nationally supporting really impressive local and regional campaigns that can prove that they can really have a real impact.
Thank you. And the second question is, what Green Party policy do you believe in most, and how will this affect your job as treasurer?
That's a really good question. I suppose, like in terms of Green Party policy at the moment, I've got quite a long-standing interest in migrants' rights. I believe very strongly that immigration detention should cease immediately, and that we should liberalise our immigration laws to a considerable extent. I'm bringing a motion to convention that's sort of loosely related to this, and I'd urge everyone to support it. In terms of how that relates to my job as treasurer, I'm not entirely sure. I would like to say that while, of course, I'm not a fiscal conservative, I don't think Greens are fiscal conservatives. I think the treasurer has to be careful to ensure that spending stays within its bounds. But I see the treasurer's role the treasurer as less of a sort of ostensibly political figure and more as one who can help build the organisation and ensure that the financial capacity to do that is there. Of course, I will play a sort of role as a committee member as well, but I think that sort of stands slightly apart from the financial work that I'll be doing.
Cool, thank you very much. Now we move on to Senate co-chair with unopposed Danny Keeling, and Danny is not. He emailed me today, today to say he's not feeling well and will not make it. He didn't send me anything to read out either.
Hi, Rajiv.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you mind if I just sort of say who Owen is? Obviously, I can't speak for him, but I feel like it would be quite nice.
Yeah, I think that's only fair.
Because I forgot to mention that I'm actually standing for a job share, so there would be two of us in the treasurer's role. I've explained myself quite well. I will just say for Rowan that he's a chartered accountant, currently living in Norwich. He's been heavily involved with the Norwich Green Party, and he's very experienced in helping small businesses and small organisations manage their accountancy, particularly with sort of technological solutions. So I think he'd be a really great addition to the team. He'd really bring a sort of specialist angle.
Thanks. Okay, so Senate co-chair Danny Keeling is not here. Didn't send me anything to read out. Should I just read out his candidate statement from his nomination? That seems fair. I'll do that. I think it's probably better than nothing. Okay, so this is from Danny Keeling running for Senate co-chair. Hey everyone, my name's Danny. Currently, I am the co-convener of Newham Green Party and one of your previous Senate co-chairs. I am passionate about elections and election logistics and communications. It's really interesting to me, the communication planning and bringing everyone together. I was the previous Senate co-chair, but I did resign as not only the term was extended longer than usual, but professional and personal reasons came in front of me. To the executive committee, I contributed as much as possible and supported positive change. I also took time and helped campaigns in the recent local elections to support other Young Greens to get elected, Young Greens get elected. I understand the role and what it entails for the last term. I understand the Senate members and how they work, and I would love to be re-elected to not only ensure the Senate is a strong committee in itself, but communicates and works strongly as a team to make sure all the regions work at their best ability. I seek your re-election to support and push our regions at this time when most important. I have to cut his statement off there. And apologies, I'm not doing very well on this. We have another member, Billy Howells, is also running for Senate co-chair. And Billy, do we have Billy? I think, yeah, I thought he was here earlier as well. Okay, I will have to assume that he's not going to come back in the next few minutes. I will read out his statement from the nomination as well, and if he reappears, then he can say anything that he wants to say. Okay. This is from Billy Howells running for Senate co-chair as well. The current Young Greens management has collapsed from lack of communications and organization to the southern clique of people managing from within has led to the failure and disenfranchisement of many members across the country, especially within the northern and midland regions. It's clear that the correct executive only care if you are from the south or have close connections with elitist members. The Young Greens require a new direction, one that doesn't focus on Brexit or internal squabbling, but on that looks to developing our branches across the UK and developing policy around our green roots. We are a party of environmentalist and socialist social equality, yet somehow we have become the very thing we oppose. The same old leadership, sometimes different people, yet the same ideals at its core, the suppression of democracy, and the wittering on how Brexit will devastate this country. Unfortunately, I have to stop his there. due to time. Now, questions, actually, they're both not here. Should I read out the questions? Is there any point if neither of them are here? We can post the questions on, yeah, we'll post them on the on our social media, and they can go ahead and respond to them on social media so people can hear what they have to say. In that case, we have ESC candidates, of which there are none. And that brings us to our break. But yeah, so there are no candidates for ESC. So it's worth saying that people, if anyone has any interest in applying for that, obviously no one here because you're already applying for things, but then they can go ahead and put their nominations forward, and they will be discussed over the next convention. Sorry, convention. I have ESC here. SPC we have you, Nick, and then ESC I have here. Is that like an is that GSC? Sorry, GSC. GSC. No one is running for GSC. Sorry, my mistake. And now, okay, so before the break, actually, SPC. So we'll go to Nick Humberstone. If you would like to, oh, is your microphone still not working?
No, I switched to my Chromebook and now it's on, I think.
Okay, cool.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, you can go ahead with your statement now.
Yeah, so I've been SPC chair for the last year. It was a tough year because it was just me on the committee for about 6 months, and then we did some co-options, but we didn't really have the energy to like convert that into getting a full slate of candidates together. So there are a lot of things that were done well for the year, and then obviously some things which weren't done very well. But as someone that's reasonably new to politics, and because I've only been political for about 2 or 3 years now, it's like a new ground for me. And having experienced it and had failures and done things wrong, I'm now best prepared to move on from that.
Sorry, Nick, I have to stop you there. Okay, so we have 2 questions for SPC. This year, there has been a lack of reports submitted on time, and the internal election timetable in the standing orders has been completely ignored. How can members trust you to fulfill your role of upholding the Constitution and standing orders?
So with regards to reports, it was kind of started at the start of the year and then fell off towards later in the year. There was a point where I uploaded about 3 months of reports, but accidentally commented them out in the HTML, so they were not visible for those 4 or 5 months or so. Next year, things will be better because I understand now the kind of discipline that it takes for this role, and having to condense the timetable for this convention in order to make all those things happen. I fully understand how important it is to make sure those deadlines are met. So next year, all I can say is they will be met, and everything should be a lot better.
Cool, thank you. There's another question has come from the chat, but to whoever wrote that, does the answer that Nick just gave answer your question, or shall I still ask that? I'll just ask it in case, and feel free, Nick, to say that you covered it in your previous answer. Can you, okay, cool. Can you tell us a bit more about the failures you mentioned in your statement and how you will avoid them this year?
So the main one was just not keeping regularly involved in terms of like setting aside time to make sure that things happen. So if I am elected, the first thing I'll do probably within the first week is basically open up the calendar for the year and put in the dates with 2 reminders for me to give the rest of EC reminders all the time to say, I need your reports for this date, and then they'll be uploaded at this time. So that's the main failing, is not sticking to a timetable that I've created for myself to like manage my own time. And if I do have that in place, then it means that if I have a busy month, I still have a set like period of time which was set aside for that, so I will be able to make sure those happen.
Okay, cool. And final question. In your opinion, what needs to be done from the Young Greens in order to get more Young Greens elected in elections, especially looking at the high stakes of national elections sooner than later?
Getting more Young Greens elected. I think a lot of it is if we can get people more involved in the processes within the Young Greens and more interested in that, then that will give us more active and connected and interested people in the way the Young Greens works, and hopefully that will convert into success in elections. I can't really say about election strategy much because it's not something that I'm particularly knowledgeable in, but I really do think that if we have a stronger internal democratic process for the next year that is put out to people in a way that it is engaging, it is interesting, then that increased level of interest within the Young Greens will also convert to increased interest in standing in elections around the country.
Cool, thanks. Should we take a break now? And I think because we're a bit over maybe 5 minutes, so if we say 5 to, we come back and start with the non-portfolio officers. Cool. Is everyone back? Okay, cool. I'll start again in a minute. Okay, so non-portfolio officers now. I'm going to read out the list I have, so just to make sure I haven't forgotten anyone for a third time. I have Edward Frank, Isabella Moir, Alexander Nettle, Robert Nixon, Tyrone Scott, who has told me that he won't make it, Will Vowell, Nanette Youssef, and Rebecca Mulvaney, who's also told me that they won't make it. Have I missed anyone out? Okay, cool. I will take that as a no. Okay, cool. So opening statement from Edward Frank.
Hello, I apologise, I've got a teething baby, so if she's a bit loud. I'm Edward Frank. I sound a little different from most people because I'm from the Scottish borders, I'm on the English side. I'm in the Berwick-upon-Tweed constituency party. I was co-elected as campaigns and communication officer with Tyrone Scott back in February, and it's been a great learning experience. I come from an area which is heavily working class, and it's great to meet like-minded young Greens who share a similar passion like I do myself. I'll end there.
Cool, thank you, Edward. Isabella.
Hi everyone, so I'm standing for non-portfolio officer and I'd love to take on the portfolio of equality and diversity with an aspect of welfare. So I'm just going to focus on the welfare part just now. So it's clear that in recent months and even recent years that youth participation in politics has really started growing, especially with the Youth Strike for Climate. And what people don't really think about, as much as they think about that these are school children and this is a school strike, they don't really think that the majority of people striking are in fact under 18. And they don't think about the fact that we need safeguarding people. And the reason I would like to go for the welfare aspect is because on EC, you need a safeguarding and deputy safeguarding officer. And I would love to take on this role and be appointed onto that. And I think equality and diversity would really fit with that, as I've been co-opted as that previously from 2017 to 2018. And I would love
I have to
to
stop
work.
you there as well.
That's all right.
Okay, cool. On to Alexander Nettle.
Hiya, can you see me, hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so for people who don't know me, I have been in the Green Party for 5 years and I've done various different things, but never on the Young Greens Executive Committee. So I've been part of 30 Under 30, I've been a local candidate, I've made TV and radio appearances, and I'm a Green Students co-chair within the University of Birmingham, and now I am the Youth Outreach Officer for Eddie Town's MEP. So I have worked a lot in the Green Party, and this is short, so I'll try and be very brief, but what I want to do with a non-portfolio role is I want to make it much easier for young Greens to take part in the media. So I want us to be prepared for general elections by producing constituency profiles of our candidates, and I want to boost their profiles internally and externally. I'd like to have a more accessible media training program for people to access quite quickly if they're having to go on the media in the short notice. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Cool. On to Robert Nixon.
Hello. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Robert Nixon. I'm a Green councillor for Bicester East on the town council here. And I'm running to be your elections officer because I want to ensure that we continue the amazing work that's been done to elect more young Green councillors up and down the country. Build on that work that's been done, that's been so successful, get more young Greens standing as target candidates, get more young Greens standing in the first place, and support young Greens through those selection processes in their local parties.
Thank you. Now, Tyrone Scott, I'm going to read out his statement. Let me time myself. Cool. I am running for election on the Young Greens Executive Committee as I am passionate about growing the Young Greens profile and helping us succeed in future elections. I have served a short term on the EC since being co-opted in March and now feel I know where additional resources are required. I am keen to increase our diversity in the Young Greens and ensure we are at the forefront of promoting equality and fighting discrimination. I would also like to help plan and implement effective campaigns as I feel we need to ensure we have a strong, identifiable cause that we are fighting for and that we can achieve realistic outcomes over the next term. I am also the selected parliamentary candidate for Hackney South and Shoreditch and will use that platform to promote the Young Greens, but to also highlight issues which are affecting young people. That is 45 seconds up for Tyrone Scott. Next is Will Vowell. I do not have Will. Okay, let me find his candidate statement then. All right, this is Will Vowell's candidate statement. Yeah. I'm applying to be a non-portfolio officer for the Young Greens with a particular desire to focus on press and communications. Being a young person in the current political climate is both daunting and empowering. Our livelihoods are more at risk from the decisions being made, but we are making our voices heard more clearly than ever before. I believe I have the skills and experience to ensure that Green voices are part of this collective youth voice. I have just finished a degree in modern languages at Oxford University. Whilst there, I stood as a local election candidate against the city's council leader and was part of a team coordinating election strategy. I was also the communications officer for Oxford Young Greens, running social media accounts, recruiting for action days, and gathering support in a local by-election. Since July, I have been working for an environmental PR firm in London. Gonna have to cut him off there. That was Will Vowell. Now to Nanette Youssef.
Hello. For everybody that doesn't know me, my name's Nanette Youssef. I'm a city councillor in Norwich since I was elected in May of this year, and I'm the youngest person that sits on Norwich City Council, and its only BAME member, which I take quite seriously. I have professional experience working in advocacy and campaigns for a large environmental NGO, and I'm beginning my master's in public policy at the start of next year. I'm really keen to bring those experiences, both professional and academic, to the role along with my passion for the Green Party. I'm standing to be international officer in the non-portfolio role, drawing on my own heritage, upbringing, and professional experience to succeed in the role.
Cool, thank you, Nanette. The last candidate for non-portfolio officer is Rebecca Mulvaney, who is not here either, but I have her statement to read. I'm Rebecca, and I'm standing to be one of your non-portfolio officers for 2019-2020. I'm an active campaigner and organizer with the Sheffield Green Party, helping out with elections. Our Young Green Group and local action on issues such as air pollution, littering, preserving green spaces, and supporting the climate strikes. I'm standing because I want to make the support and training available to the Young Greens activists the best it can be. I want us to design and launch a groundbreaking program reaching beyond 30 under 30, drawing inspiration from our sister movements such as Extinction Rebellion and People and Planet. I've previously worked within the student movement, training and mentoring people in leadership skills such as public speaking, digital advocacy, relationship building, and consensus decision making. I'm going to have to cut her off there. That was Rebecca Mulvaney. Cool, that's all the candidates, I believe. Now on to questions. The first one, and I'm going to jumble up the order of whom I ask. First question, what should we do to encourage more people who don't self-define as men to stand for EC? So let's start with Isabella Moore.
So I think this is a really important question. I think that it's really important that we amplify the voices of our women and our non-binary people. I think, unfortunately, it's become quite a big dispute in the Green Party at the moment between transphobia and our trans people. And I think it's really important that we reaffirm our commitment to trans rights, and that trans rights are human rights and non-binary people are valid. And I think it's really important that we stand up against the hate and encourage as many people as we can to stand for EC and make sure that their voices are heard. Because in the Young Greens, we represent all people and we stand for all people, regardless of your race, ethnicity, background, sexuality, regardless of what's going on. You are welcome in the Young Greens, and it's really important that we reaffirm this statement and make sure everybody feels welcome.
Thanks, Isabella. Robert Nixon.
So I think this is why it's really important to have the Equality and Diversity Officer role filled. I think that what we've got to do when we have internal or external elections is reach out beyond the normal sort of circles of people that might seek to put themselves forward for those roles. And I think there's lots of ways that we can seek to do that. But if I was elected as the elections officer, I would definitely be seeking to work with that whoever fills that position to make sure that we're not just seeking the same people to be Young Green election candidates, but we're actually making sure that we've got a diverse range of candidates standing for as non-target and target election candidates.
Thanks, Robert. Now to Will Vowell. Oh, that was the person that wasn't here, right? Right. Okay. In that case, let us move to Nanette Youssef.
I think a really good way in which we could do this is to get more people who don't identify as a man onto the committee in the first place. That would make the committee a really welcome, open, safe place for people who define to take part. It would make them feel very, very welcome. And I think that it does link into the ongoing issues such as transphobia within the party that I think we should have a no tolerance stance on. That would symbolically give people the feeling and the openness that they would need to want to step forward for the role.
Thanks, Nanette. Alexander Nettle.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I want to also say that we need to have a complete commitment to trans rights. I think it's been really worrying to see some of the problems in the party at the moment. And as Young Greens, especially, we need to stand up and say that what Turf is saying is not right. And I agree with what's just been said, have a zero tolerance policy on that. And I think when it comes to our Young Green election campaigns, I think we need to make sure that our target candidates are a good mix of different backgrounds, different ethnicities and different genders as well, to make sure that we are completely inclusive.
Thanks, Alex. Edward Frank.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. What should we do to encourage more people who don't self-define as men to stand for EC?
Well, I think you need more people visible, like as people said on the EC. And we need to educate as well. We need more. Sorry, Matt, I've got a lot going on.
No worries.
Yeah, so we need more people on EC who identify. I don't even. It doesn't even mean people who don't identify as men. It's people who identify as whatever. We just need to be more tolerant, and we need. We just need to be more careful and educate people.
Sure. Thanks, Edward. So Tyrone Scott, who is absent, has very kindly answered 2 questions himself. He's given me his answers. So I'll read one of them out now and another one later. So one question he answered was, what can we do to get more young people elected? Edward, would you mind just putting yourself on mute? Sorry, just make it a bit easier. So yeah, so Tyrone's first question he answered was, how can we get more Young Greens elected? His answer is the following: we need to ensure we have a strong EC which can support any Young Greens who wish to run in any future elections. We will also need to ensure we use our skills to mobilize effective volunteers who can support any Young Greens wanting to run. To do this, the EC needs to build effective networks, which can be done through running social events and organizing action days. We can also call on our Young Greens who have experience running an effective campaign to share their skills to encourage more people to want to do the same. That was Tyrone Scott's first answer. So then let's go to the second question. What methods do you use to work as part of a team, and can you tell us what makes you a good team player? Let's start with Nanette.
So to the answer to the question about being a good team player, I think that I just have to draw on my experience of working in a team to date. During my time working for the environmental NGO, I was part of the organisational committee for the Time Is Now mass lobby, which happened in 2019. It had over 12,000 people attending and 300 MPs also attended. To do that, we had to adequately communicate and work really well between different NGOs, all of whom were organising it. I think there was over 10 NGOs involved, and we had to make sure that everybody's needs were adequately discussed, were taken into account, and we also had to make sure that the event ran very smoothly on the day, being able to communicate ideas, objectives, incidents that were occurring really, really easily and quickly. It was the biggest mass lobby to date. It was incredibly successful. I got to do a little bit of cheeky lobbying myself, which was great. And I think the success of that just demonstrates my ability to be a very small cog in a very large machine.
Thanks, Nanette. So then to Robert Nixon.
So I think with working in a team, I think that communication is probably one of the most important aspects of that. And I think an excellent example of where I've sort of done that before is when I've been part of the team that's organised the Bicester Big Lunch in our town, and that's a operation that takes where we take up the whole of the high street and some of the streets around it, and we put on this massive event for the community. Requires a team of quite a few people, all doing all sorts of different things, and it's absolutely vital that we communicate with each other what we're doing when we're doing it in that team. Otherwise, it would just not work as a operation. So yeah, I think that's a really important skill that I bring to any sort of team.
Cool, thank you. Then to Isabella Moir.
So I'm currently on the South East Young Greens team. I'm the co-convener alongside an amazing guy called Sam. And one of the things I really try to do, the other committee members might disagree, but I think they'll agree with me, is that after each meeting or after we do something really big, I always try my best to make sure they understand that they're appreciated and that all the hard work they're doing is really paying off. I think politics at the moment is quite hostile, and I think constantly people feel like they're not doing enough, and it can get quite draining. And I know so many people constantly feel quite drowned underneath all the work, and I think it's really important that we maintain a positive attitude. Not only this, but I was lucky enough to be selected as one of the MEP candidates in the European elections for the South East region this year. So for that, there was obviously 10 candidates in the region, and it was really important that we were supporting each candidate and doing our best to raise the profile to make sure that the campaign paid off in the short space of time that it did. And luckily enough, we got the amazing Alex Phillips elected, and hopefully I just played a small part in that success. So that's how I can be a good team player.
Thanks, Isabella. Alexander Nettle.
So I think right from the get-go with this, we'll have to be team players because there are 6 non-portfolio officers to be chosen. And once those are selected, we'll have to divvy up roles and work out who wants to do what. And sometimes with our elections, there are overlaps. So we'll have to, from the start, be respectful of each other and work out what we want to do. But I think a good example of me being a team player is that as I mentioned in my opening statement, I'm now the youth outreach officer for Ellie Chowns, the West Midlands First Green MEP. And of course, when you work for a politician, especially in the European Parliament, you have to be good at being part of that team, understanding when it's right to let other people take on things, when it's right that you take on those bits, when you delegate work, when you provide leadership, and being absolutely clear with your communication between all those people and having respect for everyone.
Thanks, Alex. And then Edward Frank.
What's the question? What makes you a good team player?
Yeah, basically, but I'll read it out in full. What methods do you use to work as part of a team? And can you tell us what makes you a good team player?
Well, where I'm situated, right on the border, I've actually probably got more connections with the Scottish Green parties and the Scottish local groups. And it was actually sort of Tyrone, seeing him taking pictures in London. I thought, we're not doing much here. So what I did, I sort of tried to gather all these groups from both sides. We founded a new group, which is like the cross-border organisation. And we've got people from Extinct Rebellion, we've got people from Sunderland, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and we've got all these people coming together and just to work together to try and, do cross-border projects. We've had climate strikes. We're looking at holding like a big sort of, hopefully a festival-like event. And it's great to sort of, I suppose to an extent, I'm one of the people leading it. It's just great to meet people with different sort of points of views, but similar, and just working together to push forward.
Thanks, Edward. Okay, so our final candidate was Tyrone Scott, who is absent, but he has given us 2 answers, as I mentioned already. So his second question that he answered was, what will your priorities be? And his answer was the following. I want to ensure we have a large, diverse group of individuals ready to run in any election, whether at national or local level. One way to do this is to ensure we have populated and representative liberation groups who are active and engaged, which is something I wish to focus on should I be elected. We can then organize training days and workshops to prepare people in these groups to run in elections and ensure we have Young Greens ready to stand when an election is called. So that's the second round of questions. Third question. What is your stance on electoral alliances? I'll firstly give that to Alexander Nettle.
Okay, I'm very sceptical about electoral alliances, but I wouldn't want to rule them out. And I think, first off, it's important to say that this is a decision for a local party to make every time, and not for us to dictate or say what we think in that context. But in terms of my support, I don't want to rule anything out. And I think if we went into negotiations with another party and were respected and given a fair hearing and given options where they would stand down in favour of us, proportionate to where we would stand down for them, then I could support it. But at the moment, given the political climate, what the Lib Dems specifically have been doing recently makes me think that that's quite unlikely. So I think we need to be very, very wary about exactly what is being proposed. We need to remember which parties we are talking to, and only under specific circumstances would I personally support an alliance.
Thanks, Alex. We'll go to Edward Frank.
Well, in the last general election, we actually looked at a political alliance with our local Lib Dems, and it wasn't the best of experiences, to be honest. But they wanted us to work with them and help them out, but they weren't giving a lot back. So, but I can't say that for the whole of England and Wales. But I think if we went for I'm on the fence as well. Both sides need to compromise and they both need to support each other.
Thanks. Robert Nixon.
So I think I'll try and relate this question to what my role would be as elections officer if I were to be elected. And what I would say is that I don't want to spend any time as Young Greens election officer campaigning to get Lib Dems elected. I want to be campaigning to get more of our amazing Young Green members elected onto local councils, into Parliament, into the European Parliament, and basically, I wouldn't be spending any of my time in this role looking at sort of brokering electoral alliances. I'll be totally focused on how I can support Young Greens to get elected.
Thanks, Robert. Isabelle and moi.
So I'm going to be a classic politician here and not give a straight answer, but I'm actually quite on the fence as well. I believe that people should have the opportunity to vote Green and have the ability to vote Green wherever possible. However, at the moment, I do think we're in unprecedented times, and I think unprecedented times call for radical change, and therefore whether or not a Progressive Alliance or a Remain Alliance or anything like that would be on the cards, as Alex said and as Edward said, would be under strict conditions. And I think it's important that we honour our party and honour us as Greens as a whole. However, I do think that at the moment the country is in a crisis, and therefore we have got to do what we've got to do to put the country before our party, and we've got to make sure that we're not being hypocritical about that. So it would be a local party by local party decision, and I'm not going to make any decision as a national person on this as well.
Thank you. And finally, Nanette.
I do understand the limited need to make alliances. For example, fracturing the Remain vote could be disastrous for Brexit. But we need to be really careful how many and what sort of alliances we make. The recent incident in the London mayoral elections, when the Lib Dems, Siobhan Benita asked John Barry to stand down, when the Greens have actually beaten the Lib Dems in the 2012 and 2016 London mayoral elections, is a case in point. And we don't want to run the risk in standing in hardly any seats at all if we continue like this. If we need to make alliances, we need to make sure that they're fair and ultimately will benefit the Green Party too, and need to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks. Okay, new question. During a snap general election, being able to mobilize Young Greens is vitally important. How would you do this effectively, and how would you use your role to support election campaigns? Let's start with Isabella.
So if I was to take on the equality and diversity role, I think it's really important that we have a range of people standing, and I think it's really important that in every single constituency in a snap general election has got someone that is not just your average middle-aged white cis man. I think it's really important that our MPs, and especially the people in this election that would be elected for our parliament in this term, represent the people. And it's really important that we've got people that represent not only the Young Greens, but represent the country as a whole. And so I would use my role, if I were elected, to encourage as many young people as I could to stand and get involved with their local parties and make sure that they're aware of the selection process and building their contacts and building their communications to make sure they've got a strong case for becoming PPCs. And if there were a general election, I think the campaigns would need to be really strong and not only advocate for the Young Green, but advocate for them as a person and make sure that they understand why they're different and why they deserve to be elected.
Thanks, Isabella. Now to Robert Nixon.
So I think in terms of what I would be practically doing as elections officer to support the general election campaign, I think I would be looking to get Young Greens to wherever our target seats are. Well, we haven't decided where those are yet as a national party, but wherever they are, I would be looking to really expand the amount of phone calling we do to our Young Green members, because I think in the Southeast Young Greens, we've found that that's probably the most effective way to actually get people who are members of the party already along to things like action days and support on polling day and things like that. And I think we played an instrumental role in getting Green councillors elected, in particularly in Brighton and Reading this year. And I think I'll be employing some of those strategies to get Young Greens to support target seats in a general election.
Thanks, Robert. Edward Frank.
I think having target wards is great, and you obviously need to put a lot of effort and movement, but I think we should look at other wards which maybe there hasn't been a young green presence or very small green presence. If a green knocked on my door a couple of years ago, I would have no idea, you know. It's only just because of a local and you really push for me to get involved with the local young greens. I think we need to concentrate, if there is a snap election, on working class communities and communities which haven't got a green presence, because these people are interested. These people do care about the environment, but the only people campaigning in those areas, the only people campaigning in my area is UKIP and the Brexit Party. There's not a visible green sort of presence in my area, and we need to get a green presence in the areas which there aren't green presence. Yeah, that's me.
Edward. Sorry, were you finished?
I was just saying that was me.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Will Vowell is now with us. I'll let you read your statement now, but does it make sense for you to answer the questions we've already had, or should we just continue as we are doing? Okay, fine. All right, we'll continue. I'll wait for Will to tell me that he's ready to say something. In that case, let's go to Nanette, please.
I think we need to take a four-pronged attack to dealing with this. We need to spot and encourage those to stand from a really early stage, and also to work with national groups to ensure that they're doing the same consistently. Getting elected can be a really strange and overwhelming process if you're doing it in isolation. It's really easy to feel that your voice isn't being heard. We need to put together some information based on all of our own experiences to try and overcome these obstacles and give some pointers as to how that can be done. And we also need to learn from one another's experiences. Regular away days with other candidates and elected representatives who are all young Greens could facilitate this. And then we also need to ensure that our candidates have really solid evidence policy initiatives behind them that are taken seriously by those in Westminster. It would give you so much confidence knowing that the policies you have behind you would propel you in that direction. And finally, we need to remember that we're young Greens for a reason. We're young, and we need to play that card more in campaigns to get a stronger young vote.
Thanks, Nanette. Alexander Nettle.
I think I'll start by saying it's important that we don't forget about the local parties where there aren't young Greens in a future general election. Obviously, when it comes to a general election, we'll have some seats nationally that are key targets, and I think we need to make sure we are including lots of young Green groups, whether that's a young Green student group versus regional committees, for example, to be active in those campaigns. But I think also we do want young Green candidates to be doing well, and we want to identify as soon as we can with the respective parliamentary candidate lists where those young Greens are. I think we want to start building up a sort of press release, which would be a kind of profile of those candidates that we can send out to media. And I think we want to prepare constituency profiles for the important constituencies so that we know immediately what the underlying local issues that work well for us in those campaigns would be. So yeah, I think it's about making sure we don't go hell for leather just on young candidates and also look at the wider picture, but also support our young candidates as best we can.
Thanks, Alex. Let's go on to, I'm not sure if we're ready yet, so let's go on to the next question. How would you support young Greens to ensure that your work and campaigns... Oh my, I just got a notification from my microphone. Can people still hear me? Yeah, okay, cool. Sorry, let me repeat that. How would you support young Greens in Wales and ensure that your work and campaigns are fully inclusive of devolved issues? Let's start with Isabella Moore.
So I think it's really important that we communicate with people in Wales and the young Greens in Wales to make sure that we're giving them what they want. I think that it's really important that we ask them specifically what they would like us to do and ask them how they would like our help. I think assumptions can really be quite dangerous sometimes, especially when it comes to devolution and how we can help other regions. And I think it's really important that we don't just assume they need this, they want this event, they want this action day. and we need to make sure that not only are we reaching out to them about asking what they want, but that they feel comfortable enough to come to us in different times to say, hey, EC, we'd really like your help with this, and offer that support to them and build that relationship with them to ensure that we're not just the Young Greens of England, and we are the Young Greens of England and Wales.
Thanks, Isabella. I might sound a bit different because my headphones just ran out of battery, so I'm now using my laptop speakers. So Will's here now, so shall we hear his introduction before we continue? I think we should probably, I think it makes more sense to let him get involved as early as possible. So yeah, Will, go ahead. You have 45 seconds to make your beginning statement.
Great. So just want to say hello. Many of you probably don't know me, but my name's Will. I've been quietly active in the Young Greens for a few years now. I went to Oxford University and I stood in the local elections there against the city's council leader, and I was the communications officer for the Oxford Young Greens, and that's where my sort of experience comes in. My sort of area is communications, and I've now just started a job in London as the working for an environmental comms and PR agency, and so I'm hoping to use the contacts and experience that I've got there and I've learned in Oxford as well, working with the Oxford Greens, to amplify the Young Green voice.
Thanks, Will. Just to let you catch up on talking time, I might ask you one of the questions from earlier, just...
That's fine, yeah.
If people think that's fair. So this was the first question we put out to non-portfolio officers. What should we do to encourage more people who don't self-define as men to stand for EC?
So basically, obviously it's hugely important that we diversify as a group. I think particularly with the sort of Caroline Lucas episode earlier in the week, I think it's huge. I think it was a real sort of point for us to take stock of where we are and sort of look at diversifying the party and making sure that we're constantly open. And I think particularly like considering the political climate we've got, even though sort of a lot of the nation is sort of taking into account more of sort of diversifying and being welcoming to all different types of people. I think we as the Greens need to lead that charge, and I think sort of welcoming more people onto all our committees and helping them to prioritising them and standing for election would be hugely significant.
Thanks, Will. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the question we were doing before you joined us, which was, how would you support Young Greens in Wales and ensure that your work and campaigns are fully inclusive of devolved issues?
Well, yeah, of course. I think one of the biggest issues that we're seeing at the moment, and the area that I'd like to focus on, is the sort of youth climate strikes that we've been seeing. And they're going to have more of these climate strikes happening in Wales and particularly Cardiff in the oncoming months. And I think it would be hugely significant if we could get a lot of the Welsh Young Greens to play a big part in that. I'd like to see a lot more of sort of Welsh voices in those sort of campaigns that aren't necessarily sort of electoral campaigns per se, but are local campaigns on climate change issues. And I think if we can get Welsh Young Greens involved in those, playing a part in sort of alongside Extinction Rebellion Wales or the sort of UK Climate Student Network, getting Welsh voices in there, I think that would be really important and could make a real difference in getting Welsh voices heard in the Greens across England and Wales.
Cool, thanks, Will. Sorry for jumping around a bit.
That's all right.
Okay, so let's go to Alexander Nettle.
I actually completely agree with everything that Izzy said earlier. I think it's important to not come across as overly patronising when we look at this issue and go, oh, people in England can help Wales more than perhaps we should. But I think what we can do is simply offer our support as much as they need it and go through the normal procedures that we would do in other elections for Wales, so looking through Target to Win, local election campaigns, etc. But yes, I think we need to be careful not to be overly patronising.
Thanks, Alex. Nanette, please.
So in a rather warped way, I think that this links to my role as international officer were to be elected. Climate change isn't just, linked to the UK. It should be an international movement if we stand a chance of combating it. It doesn't know borders. It doesn't know about devolved nations. But like as you said, we shouldn't just assume how best to help. We need Welsh people's own voices to be heard, and we need to communicate with them so that we can best understand how it can be an empowering experience for everyone. On our side, on every issue, on every policy, we would need to consider devolved issues and incorporate that consistently into our message.
Thanks, Nanette. Edward Frank?
I think we need to meet them. But yeah, you can't presume what people want. I don't think just Wales, I think other parts of the country, I'm 300 miles away from London. But yeah, I think it's wrong to presume that people are following certain things, and you need to meet them. And obviously, people in Wales will have campaigns and things that are happening in their locations, which we are probably not aware of. And we need to talk to them and offer any support that we can to help them in their struggles and their movements.
Thanks. Robert Nixon.
So I think there's some really exciting opportunities to get Greens elected in Wales coming up, and as elections officer, I would be seeking to work directly with Young Greens based in Wales to make sure that they've got the best chances of, as I said a bit earlier, of navigating those local party selection procedures, ensuring that they know how to do that, and have the best chance of becoming sort of target candidates and running as target candidates in winnable wards and constituencies to get themselves elected to all levels of government in Wales. I think there's some real opportunities there coming up, and I'd be seeking to fully support that.
Thanks. We are out of questions for non-portfolio officers, so I will just go back to Will again for the sake of fairness and give him one of the questions that we had earlier. What methods do you use to work as part of a team, and can you tell us what makes you a good team player?
So my sort of, as a communications person, part of my degree is I did languages at university, and a huge part of that is being able to communicate well with other people and sort of interacting with them and listening as well as speaking. And I think that's really something that I'm good at. I've taken on board. I also, as part of my job now that I do, I work in a communications agency. We work as part of a broader team helping lots of environmental movements to further their message and the cause, the wider cause, I guess. And as part of that, I really sort of learned off other people, and I think that's a really important part of being in a team, is using sort of learning off, like understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, and being able to use those to help other people as well as yourself. So I think that's definitely something that I've learned, and hopefully my strengths in communicating and the sort of strategic communications be something I would be able to help other people with, and I'm sure I'll be able to learn lots of the skills of other people as well.
Cool, thanks. We are out of questions. I think, does anyone spectating have anything they would like to ask? Otherwise, it is fairly late. We could call it there.
Would it be worth if people wanted to do like final statements and just finish off?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fine. Okay, assuming no one else, there are no more questions. Okay, let's go ahead and assume that. Okay, cool. So finishing statements, then I'll do them in a random order as well. Can we have Alexander Nettle? And feel free, anyone, if you don't have anything to say, to pass off the opportunity.
Okay, thanks very much for organising these hustings, and thank you to everyone for taking part. yeah, I'd just like to end by talking about what I want to do, and I think that's really just bridging the gaps in our sort of electoral and media strategies now, and making sure that Young Greens are really equipped if they ever find themselves in a situation where they need to go and do immediate performance. For example, my first radio and TV performances happened just because the local party needed someone last minute. And I think it would have been really useful to just be able to go on the website, see a nice, convenient list of Young Green policies, a bit like the manifestos we got up now, but a more permanent style like that, and then some just generic TV debate, radio debate advice. And I think that we can do that and help our prospective parliamentary candidates or local election candidates or all sorts if we have those sorts of things in place. So that's something that hasn't really been spoken about tonight, but I think everything else I wanted to say has been. So thank you for listening, and yeah, good luck to everyone. Thanks very much.
Cool, thanks. That was Alexander Neto. Next, go to Will Vowell.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. Sorry I could only join very late, but yeah, I just want to say my sort of area of expertise is communications, and I'm not going to pretend to be a sort of professional in elections and electoral campaigning or activism or anything like that, but I do feel like I can offer some real contacts and experience and expertise and help in communication strategy and helping the party to use some of those materials that we have to further the Young Greens in the national media, in local and regional media, and really further our message. I think electoral success over the past year has been hugely positive and has made such a big impact. I think the next stage for us is growing our audience even further and making the most of the youth climate strikes that are happening at the moment across the country and capitalising on that to get our people out into media and communicating our message with them. So that's something that I'd like to bring to the table, and I hope that people will understand that.
Thanks, Will. Before I go to the next person, I just mentioned quickly that Billy has just sent me an email apologising for leaving. He said that torrential rain had caused some technical difficulties and his Wi-Fi is not working. So hopefully he can catch up a little bit by maybe responding on social media if he wants to do that. Cool. Closing statement to Edward Frank.
I wish I didn't suggest it. My brain's a bit frazzled. So I can't really sort of boast of like higher education and stuff. When I was 22, I was homeless, and for being on a minimal income, last year or about 6 months, I was only on like £50 a week. And when you've got 2 kids, it's a lot. So I think I've got experiences that maybe other people might not have. I'm not saying that people don't have them. But I feel that maybe I could interact and reach out to a particular type of people which normally wouldn't be interested in green politics. And I feel really passionate about what the Green Party is doing. And, it's quite scary what's going on around the world. And it's just sort of so nice to see so many happy faces and nice people who seem positive about politics. So, so thank you for hosting. And thank you, everyone else.
Thanks, Edward. Isabella Moore.
So as everybody said, thank you so much for chairing this Hustings, and it's incredible being involved in such an amazing lineup of non-portfolio officers and everybody standing for every role. It's incredible to see the youth movement and the Young Greens standing to be these roles. It's incredible. Just to reiterate what I've already said, I think it's really important that we're being inclusive and accessible, and we're reaching out to every single person, every single member of the Young Greens and beyond to make sure they feel welcome and safe and included. And not only that, but it's really important that they are happy and they are healthy and that our membership is safe. And we need to be tackling the mental health crisis head on, and we need to start with the roots. So I don't believe we can do that without tackling our membership first and ensuring that everybody has someone that they can go to when they've got a trouble, or if they don't want to go through the complaints procedures, if it's not a complaint. I feel it's really important that someone to be on EC that they can just speak to and let things out of, to ensure that their welfare is their priority. Thank you.
Thanks. Robert Nixon.
Yeah, so I think as I've already said, my focus, if I'm elected as a non-portfolio officer, is going to be on getting more Young Greens elected at all levels of government. I think we'll do this in 3 ways. I think we support Young Greens to stand in the first place, and we do that by really reaching out to our entire membership and potentially beyond. And helping them understand the selection process in local parties, and helping them to actually get into the position of standing in the first place. Once we've got more Young Green candidates, we need to support them to become targets, and support more a diverse range of Young Greens to become target candidates. And once we've got a diverse range of Young Greens standing as target candidates, we need to build our activist space so we can get out and run more action days and support those target campaigns, so as many of them as possible are successful campaigns and deliver more Green representatives at all levels.
Thanks, Robert. And Nanette Youssef.
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate what everybody said and say thank you for such an engaged and stimulating hustings. I would just like to close by saying what I'd like to do in the role if I were to be elected. The climate and environment emergency that we're under at the moment is an international emergency. It doesn't know borders or ethnicities. We need to build on our links with the Global Young Greens and the Federation of European Young Greens, and to continue to form links with other emerging groups to take on this international crisis. We also need to build a platform of young green activists who know exactly how to push and where it is needed most. We need to harness the expertise of environmental activists around the world and learn from their experiences to make our own more effective. This is really, really important, especially now when the UK's foreign policy is becoming increasingly isolationist. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening, and best of luck.
Thank you very much, Nanette. And thank you to everyone for coming, people who watched, and to all the candidates, and good luck as well. That's it. Let's call it a night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Do we just press leave meeting?
I can do it. Thanks so much, all.
I'm too scared to press any button.
Cheers. Bye. I'll do it.
Thank you all.
Bye, all.